to everybody. Bradley Thomas, President of FinPro's my name, and welcome to our webinar today, where we're throwing out some of the technical work, and this is really about you. So can I firstly pay my respects to the Indigenous people, the lands which we meet today. I'm on Jarrah land, and obviously many of you are from different lands across Victoria, possibly maybe even interstate, paying respects to ours past, present and emerging. As I said, today's session is not about accounting standards, not about the budget, not about deliberative engagement or anything else to do with local government. This is very much about you. And today we've got Clare from Top 5 Movement to come along and just share some of those tips for recharging, refueling the body, and really when we get that opportunity to come out of COVID, being up and about, ready to take on the new way of working in the new world. So enough from me, and I'm going to head over straight to Clare. So welcome, Clare. Welcome to the Friends of FinPro, and we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Bradley. Thank you and Gab and the FinPro team for organising this opportunity. Something at my organisation, Top 5 Movement, that we say a lot is about the importance of slowing down to be able to go faster. And I know for sure that you've all got a spiraling inbox or a long to-do list of things that you could be spending your time otherwise. And so I want to say hats off and thanks for taking the time to come along to this opportunity and flip that script a little bit around how we're turning up at this time. I've got some slides that I'd love to share with you. So let's do that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore some mindset tools. So we're going to check in or slow down to go faster, share some mindset tools that you'll actually be able to use on the job. And then if we've got time at the end, we'll have some Q&A. One thing I know for sure is that each of you will go away with one thing at least that is immediately actionable to support you as you navigate the rest of lockdown and the rest of 2021. Before we dive into any of the content, I'd really love to just say that this has been designed for workshop purposes and educational purposes today. It's certainly not designed to replace any past, current or future licensed support from a medical professional that you may receive. While we are going to be talking a little bit thinking patterns and our health, it's certainly not designed to replace any of that work that you may be doing. What I'd really love to do is to just check in for a moment. So part of our opportunity to slow down, to go faster, is this chance to actually recognize for a moment, how are you feeling? Like, it's been a pretty big 18 months. And this list here on the screen is a list of normal feelings and behaviors that people might be experiencing during a pandemic. And I can hand on heart say that at some time over the last 18 months, I've experienced all of these or felt all of these, with a particular favour for me towards number 6. So a bit of emotional eating and a bit of extra chocolate. And number 8, which is losing those boundaries between work and home, which has become so easy for us to do as many of us are working from home as well, or have had times over the last 18 months that we have done that. And so I'd really love for you to just check in and have a look at this list and drop into the chat box for me just a number. How many of these have you maybe been experiencing over the last year? And I know some of you groups are meeting in a waiting room, so feel free to drop in more than one number if you want to. But if you had to do a quick count, how many of these might you have experienced at some point during the last 18 months? And again, I've said 11 out of 11, so there's no shame here. Yeah, others are saying 11 out of 11. Thanks, Louisa. Others are saying, oh, we're getting some private messages here too. Yeah, others are saying mostly number 3, number 11. Some are saying 1 and 11, all of the above. Yeah, can tick off quite a few, Deborah. Yeah, a lot of us can. Yeah, so many of us. And I think the really important thing to recognize here that's one of us maybe experiencing, 1 to 11 of these, but most of the people around us are also experiencing a mix of these. And of course they can move at any time. The other way I really wanted us to check in this morning is Mark's saying he's been in chockdown instead of lockdown. That's great, Mark. I haven't heard that before. I love it. Yeah, I think it's really important that we reflect on that and keep it real, I guess, around how we're traveling. Now, the other way I wanted to check in this morning or this afternoon, sorry, is just to give you an opportunity to think about in another way, rather than just a list of pandemic worries, but if you were to think about how you're feeling, and if you, in this case, I'd love you to pick a picture, and let me bring these pictures up. If you were to just pick a picture that best represents how you're feeling right now, what would you say? Which picture would you describe and why? And I'd love you to have a look on this slide as well. So this is our one more opportunity just to check in or slow down to go faster. Is which picture best describes how you're feeling right now and why? And for those of you that are fortunate enough to be meeting as a team in a room, don't worry so much about dropping it in the chat box, just share it with the person next to you. Which picture best represents how you're feeling right now and why? Which picture best represents how you're feeling right now and why? And there's a method to my madness here, as we're actually going to build on this throughout the session. So thanks, Bradley, saying it's like rolling of the dice when the restrictions will ease. There's a saying that fire twirling picture, too much is going on. Jacinta saying under the doona, rightly so. Jacinta, so many people can relate to that, I'm sure. Hat over the face, yeah, due to feeling overwhelmed and isolated. Others are saying the fire twirling, it's too chaotic. Others are saying that the top left, the race, always racing. Wonderful. Others are saying the shoe due to some fundraising and mental health, pro-mental health activities that their organisations are taking in as well. Again, there's no right or wrong answers here. It's just that opportunity to check in, to slow down before we go faster and move into some tools as well. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. All right. Now I'd love to share with you one of the most beautiful pictures. And it doesn't represent life for me right now, and you'll understand why in a moment when I share it with you. But it shares a picture of my time, my life at a different time. So I used to work on one of the islands in the Whitsundays. It was 20 years ago, and I was 20 years old. And I deferred uni. I'm a country Victorian girl, and I was studying accounting at Ballarat Uni, and I deferred uni for a year to follow one of my housemates up to work on this island. And originally we were going for a few months, but we ended up staying for almost a year. The island that we worked on was called the South Mole Island, and it was up in the Whitsundays. Perhaps some of you have been there. Admittedly, this picture isn't exactly of South Mole Island because it's since been destroyed by a cyclone. But in my memory of 20 years ago as a young uni student, this is very much what it looked like. Now, when I worked here, my role was as an activities and an entertainment officer, which basically meant that every day my job was to make sure that guests were having the best time that they possibly could that came to the island. And they were largely young families that stayed at the island there. And so on the hour, every hour, I would run an activity. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, we would run tropical fish feeding. We'd go and feed the fish. At 11 o'clock in the morning, we'd run another activity. Maybe it was taking a bushwalk on the island, or perhaps it was doing archery or water polo in the pool. And each on the hour, every hour, there was another activity. At 3 o'clock every day, we fed the tropical birds. And every day at 3:30, my job, without any word of a lie, was to go and find a coconut on the ground and go and meet the guests at the coconut splitting spike. And we'd split that coconut open and share fresh coconut around. That was my job. By nighttime, we ran entertainment for the guests. It might be calling bingo or a trivia night or putting on a staff show. And it was a load of fun. we stayed on the island as staff, and I paid $4 a day for accommodation or board that came straight out of my pay, and we paid $8 a day for 3 meals a day, and we got to eat the same food as the people in the restaurant as well. Sometimes maybe ours was a day old, but it was still, you know, beautiful chef cooked food. The guests paid hundreds of dollars to stay in the beachfront accommodation, and then there was a small fence, and then there was the staff accommodation. And look, it may have only been about a 2.5 star, but we paid $4 a night, and we were never in our rooms anyway. You could actually say that we literally worked in paradise. But even though we worked in paradise without a care in the world, all our bills paid for, our work was pretty much fun, people still complained so much. And they bond over these words on the screen. They would say, I'll be happier when. I'll be happier when it's busier. I'll be happier when it's not as busy. I'll be happier when the weather gets better. I'll be happier when it's not as hot. And after my stint working in paradise, to my parents' delight, I came back to Ballarat Uni and finished off my accounting degree and moved into some more professional work in organisations like Telstra and NAB. And these words also then followed everywhere. You know, you'd see people in those organizations bonding again over this kind of bonding over complaining. I'll be happier when I get a pay rise. I'll be happier when I get a promotion. I'll be happier when this org change is over. I'll be happier when, I'll be happier when, I'll be happier when. And if we step back to our daily lives, we see this as well, or different versions of this, of people all the time thinking, I'll be happier when I lose weight, when I move house, when I get the new car, that is the time when I'll be happier. And rightly so at the moment, with so much uncertainty and a lot of the freedoms of our lives dependent on what's happening outside of our control in many ways with the pandemic. It's really easy for us to fall into a space where we're saying, I'll be happier when I get vaccinated, or I'll be happier when we're out of lockdown, or I'll be happier when I've got more uncertainty. And so whilst they are, of course, things to be aiming for and to be looking forward to and thinking about, when we just focus on those, we lose a really big opportunity, and that is the moment that's right in front of us at any point in time. And through nearly a couple of decades of doing this work in some way, shape or form, in supporting people around supporting with behaviour change, there's a few gaps that we love closing, and that is the gap between where we are right now and where we want to be in the future. And one of my trades, and many of my team are trained as coaches. And so we're very much about supporting people to think aspirationally and think towards the future. But we're also really, really focused on supporting people to bring themselves back to where they are right now in this moment. A couple of other gaps that we really love to support and close in our work is the gap between the things that we know and the things that we do. So the things that we actually know and the things that we do. And the final gap is the gap on the mental health spectrum. So many of you will know that at any point in time, we're somewhere on the mental health spectrum. We might be right down one end where we're really struggling or in crisis mode, right through to the other end where we're thriving or really highly functioning. And at any point in time, we're somewhere along that spectrum. And inevitably in our lives, we're all going to slip back from wherever we are now. And the work that we do supports people to proactively build their mental health. So that when they do slip back, it's maybe not for as far or for as deeply or for as long as well. And so what we're going to do today is going to draw back the curtain on some of our work and some of our award-winning work, and leave you with some tools that you can apply to the current day, current context. Now, there is this quote that I really love, and I must find out who said it. It always slips my mind, but it goes a little like this, and that is, if you want to impress somebody, make it complicated. If you want to make change, keep it simple. And that is absolutely what we're going to do today. Some of these tools you will have heard about before or thought of before, and it's very much around how can we use these tools now. It's not about the question isn't are these new tools or not, it's about how does this apply to how I'm living my life in and out of lockdown right now. So just to keep that in mind. All right. So, just lastly, we've been doing this work in 40 countries with hundreds of organizations and tens of thousands of people. And we're going to share today some of the tools that we know work best as well. Before we start sharing some tools, I wanted to share this idea with you, and that is that annual leave takes up 8% of our year, and that so many of us in normal pre-pandemic times, maybe worked really hard. We'd go hard all year, and then we'd know that at some point there was this annual leave coming up, and that'd be the time that we would recharge and reset. And I kind of think that's a little bit outdated. And especially now, people are less likely to be taking their leave because they're stuck at home rather than heading off somewhere beautiful. And so the idea here is that our annual leave takes up 8% of the year. The other 92% is time where we need to learn new ways to recharge and reset and refuel on the fly, whether we're in a pandemic or not. So let's dive in. When I say the word filter, what springs to mind? When I say the word filter, what springs to mind? Where can you think of a filter being used? And I'd love you to drop into the chat box or take yourself off mute if you'd like to share an idea. You're welcome, of course, to have your cameras on now if you'd like to. We'd love to see your faces. Also mindful that people are working from all different weird and wonderful places. So okay if you're out for a walk or listening in from somewhere else. But in the meantime, please drop into the chat box for me. When I say the word filter, what springs to mind? Oh, some great answers coming through here. Yes, a pool filtering the water, a camera, a tap. Snapchat, social media, of course, influencing and filtering photos so that we look at our best. Others are starting to say coffee. It's nearly about that time, isn't it? Coffee time. Fish Tank has a filter again. Irene saying swearing. Yes. Yeah. Might be when you choose to swear and don't choose to swear. I won't ask for any volunteers, but another really common thing that someone might say is that, you might think of someone that has no filter, and I won't ask for any volunteers, but we all know someone that, has no filter. They're thinking as they're speaking. That's all happening at the same time. The other one on here, which I absolutely love, Luke, you're my kindred spirit out there, an Excel filter. If it can't be organized in an Excel sheet, then what's the point really, I say. So also a really great example. So all of these filters have something in common. They're taking lots of information and organizing it in some way, and then hopefully presenting what's useful, whether it is, filtering a photo so we look better, whether it's taking the coffee ingredients and filtering it so we get the best of the best. And what I really wanted to remind you of today or share with you is that one of the most powerful filters that any of us could ever hope to have, that we use every day, is our brain. And our brain actually filters everything that we experience in this world, the things we say yes to, the things we say no to, the way we approach things, the way that we step away or shy away from things. And just to give you a quick reminder of how powerful it is, I'm going to show you a slide in a moment. And on this slide, there's loads of information. And what I want you to do is, in the few seconds it's going to be up, is notice in as much detail as you can everything that is blue, okay? Everything that is blue in as much detail as you can. All right, I'm going to pop it up now. Then what I'd love you to do is to drop in the chat box for me, what did you see? And there's bonus points for detail. Now, for those of you that are meeting in a room together, don't worry about dropping in the chat box. Just turn to the person next to you immediately when we turn the slide off and share with them, what did you see that was blue, in as much detail as you can. You're going to have 5 seconds. Let's go. All right, into the chat box. What did you see? Tell me. What did you see that was blue in as much detail as you can? Oh, some answers are starting to fly through. Love it. Great work, everyone. Oh, someone's even picked it was what size? Oh, I won't mention the detail because it'll be a spoiler alert. Alan, some great detail there. This is incredible. You're all on fire. I'm just doing a bit of a quick count. So most people here have got 5 or 6. So there were six blue things on that slide. So let me just do a bit of a quick count. Most people have got about 5 or 6. So let's just conservatively say It's about 200 blue guesses there. All right. So, and all great detail there. What type of butterfly it was. Luke saying what side the Ugg boot was. Absolutely. Now, this time, what I'd love you to do is to drop into the chat box. It's just a number this time, okay? And just a number. And it is the number of things that you're absolutely sure and are so confident that you saw that you could list in detail what they were, that were red. Go for it. What can you list? The number of things you could list. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, nothing. Nil. We've got all zeros. So we've gone conservatively about 200 guesses of blue things to red. Here is the slide. There are the red things. And there it is in its full glory, all of those pictures. And so, look, it's a really seemingly simple and maybe a bit of a silly example, but I think it's just a really great, powerful reminder for us about how powerful that brain's filter is. That filter in our brain is so powerful. And so in that case, we were asking it to look for blue things. And if we step back from this workshop and think more broadly, maybe in our work or our lives, what is our brain looking for? Because the chances are most of us are not guiding it to see things or influencing it to see things in certain ways, which means it can be our past experiences or fears or beliefs, or just our brain on cruise mode that is influencing the things that we actually see. This is a part of our brain that maybe if you've decided to get a new car or a different car, that maybe you start to see that car everywhere. It's also that same part of our brain that if you maybe think about someone in your life and you make some big broad assumptions around that, maybe you say, oh, they're always late, or they always talk over me. And so your brain, like laser focus, will go, well, that's a true statement, so I'm going to find lots of evidence for that. And so I want to just give you a moment, and I'm not going to ask you to share this, but I just want to give you a quiet moment to think that where might your brain's filter need a little bit of fine tuning? Is there an area in your life where that could use a touch of fine tuning? Perhaps it's at work. Perhaps for lots of people, it's around your own confidence. Is it about the way that you talk to and support yourself? Is it the filter that you have on when you're learning something new or when you're supporting others as well? Just something to think about. I'm not going to ask you to share that. It's a very personal thing, but I just love you to just take a moment to think around where might your filter need some fine tuning, and then we'll dive into a little bit more around why it is important. I'd love to ask, and again, you can drop your guesses in the chat box here. Does anyone have any idea around how many thoughts we have a day? Anyone have any ideas around how many thoughts we have a day? Take any guesses? Thousands? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Too many. Thanks, Alison. Way too many, Luke. Yeah. Yep. You're right. Those that are suggesting thousands, that's true. And some research suggests that we have 65,000 thoughts a day. And I'm saying too many, particularly during the night. Don't we all? And so, look, the jury's out on the number of thoughts that we have a day, and there's different pieces of research that have looked into this, but I think what we can agree on is that we have a lot. We have a lot, and a lot of our thoughts are unconscious, so they're subconscious, they're bubbling away, and we're not even aware of them. And some of them, of course, are front and center. We just couldn't possibly pay attention to that many thoughts. Now, for the average person, we have far more negative than positive thoughts. And this is because our brain runs on what's called a negativity bias. If left to its own devices, we have what's called a negativity bias. And this is because a part of our brain's job is to look after us, to keep us protected, which means keeping us in our comfort zone and looking out for dangers. It means comparing ourselves to other people to see from a sense of, is it safe for me to step out, speak up, and move forward at this point in time? And if you've got risk, an element of risk in your role, and many of you at different points on behalf of yourselves, but also on behalf of your clients, need to be putting on that type of risk role, that negativity bias can be a really incredible strength and super skill, because you're actually trying to understand different scenarios and being able to mitigate that risk. Way back in caveman days, having this negativity bias in place could have been a matter of life and death. This could actually have been around protecting yourself from danger. But if we flash forward to modern days and pandemic days, it's most likely that our negativity bias is in overdrive when it comes to the adrenaline that's coursing through our body, because we're always connected and we've got, never-ending amount of work, never-ending amount of opportunity to be following up as well. And so our negativity bias can go into overdrive there. The other thing I wanted to share about the number of thoughts we have is that most of our thoughts every single day are old. Most of our thoughts every single day that we have are old. In fact, only about 2 to 10% of our thoughts each day are new. And what this means is that most of our thoughts and our thinking patterns are like habits. Most of them, they're old, we've had them before, and they can just be on autopilot, right? And all of the work that we do in my company is around supporting people to make the most of these new thoughts each day. I actually think it is one of the most undervalued resources in anyone's organization or life, is around making the most of these new thoughts. And it's a little bit like compound interest, because the thoughts that you focus on and choose to add in today, they go in your bank of thoughts that are then available for repeat for the next day. So over time, you can really shift and uplift the quality of that bank of thoughts as well. So I don't believe for a second that positive thinking is enough. Sometimes it has its place, but I think often it's really inaccessible and a bit boring. And we've all been having a time where we've been having a tough day and someone's maybe said something to us like, oh, just think more positive or pull your socks up. And that's just not an option for you when you're having one of those days, right? So I'm going to share with you what we believe in instead, and what we really believe you can focus on to recharge, refuel, and reset those new thoughts every single day. To help us understand that, I want to share with you with this model. This model is around, we call it the thoughts triangle at top 5. And it's based on the idea of cognitive behavioral therapy, which some of you may have seen before at some point in your life, when it comes to maybe if you've been seeing someone for mental health, or someone in your family has. CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy may have been used as an intervention or a support to navigate that time. The way we love to use it at top 5 is to use it as a springboard, is to really actually use this model as a springboard to understand and leverage the opportunity and the investment we can make every day in our thoughts. So to see how this works in action, what I want to do is let's run through an example together. So the basic idea is that what we think, our thoughts, and we know now that we've got thousands of them a day, they impact how we feel, which impacts how we actually turn up and what we show to the world. So these first 2 boxes, they're actually behind the scenes, and this last box is what we show to the world. So let's do an example that is probably really similar for all of us. Imagine it's just gone 1:30. Imagine you've just found out at 3 o'clock today, you've got to call someone back about an issue. And this person is a bit of a tricky stakeholder. You've maybe had some tricky dealings with them before, and you've got to call them back at 3 o'clock. Now, for many people, it'd be normal for that, that call isn't happening till 1:30, for those thoughts to start to bubble away now. And what we call at top 5 is the mental run-up. And so I want you to think for a moment, what could be some normal and potentially negative thoughts, default thoughts that might go through your head in the lead up to this phone call or meeting? What are some of the thoughts that naturally might go through your head? You've got this call at 3 o'clock. You really don't want to have it. It's a bit of a tricky stakeholder. What are some of the most common and normal thoughts that might go through your head at this point or in the lead up to that? Love to hear your suggestions in the chat box, or if someone wants to take themselves off mute. Some great answers starting to come through here. I hate this job sometimes. Why me? How can I get out of this? Starting to think about the various scenarios or the worst case scenarios. Also thinking about the things that could go wrong. Really great examples, everyone. Thank you. Here are some more really common ones on the slide. Here we go again. We've got to deal with this person again. This won't be good. So almost already deciding it's not going to be good. I can't be bothered. That links in with some of the comments you've shared in the background, and almost a bit of suiting up, like getting ready for that mental battle, almost kind of like mentally starting to protect yourself with some different behavior as well. And so that's in the top box, right? If those thoughts were front and center, if these are the thoughts that were front and center, how would it be really common to feel? What are some common feelings that you might experience if these are the thoughts that are going through your head? Yeah, a bit of anxiety. Thanks. Oh, that seems to be really common. Yeah, a bit of anxiety, absolutely, might start to bubble away. Yeah, bit of anger. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, pretty natural. That kind of preemptive anger, and anger that you maybe have to deal with that as well. Some great examples. Thanks, everyone. And so here are some more feelings there on the slide. Defeated, out of control, a bit scared, maybe a bit demotivated. Again, kind of picking up on one of your comments there around why me and do I really have to do this? And so again, this is happening behind the scenes, right? This is what you're thinking, maybe thinking, and the common feelings that you might have. And so to take you then to that third box, and this is the third box here is, remember, about what we actually show to the world. And so you can imagine then you've had an hour and a half of a mental run-up bubbling away, maybe a bit of anxiety and anger and stress bubbling away behind the scenes. By the time you actually pick up that phone, if they've been the strongest feelings you've been experiencing, what's that call going to be like? What are you going to be like on that call? What's your communication going to be like? I'd love to hear your suggestions in the chat box. Bit defensive. Yeah, thanks, Laura. Absolutely. You could go in there with that defensive. Thanks, John. Yeah, maybe feeling a bit irrational as well. Great example. Close-minded. Yeah, absolutely. Some great examples here. And so here are some more on the slide that many of you have picked up. Close-minded, closed to possibility, not listening or withdrawn, defensive or standoffish, maybe a bit out of character, perhaps forgetting what the ball is as well. And so they could be really common ways that you're showing up to that call. And you know what? It all stems from what you're focusing on there as well. So what I really believe in is the idea here of circuit breaking, actually being able to circuit break and put this lightning bolt in there. It's about how do we interrupt this cycle that goes around and around and around. And one of the questions that we can actually ask ourselves to interrupt or break this circuit is, I'll share in a moment. I'm just actually going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. I think we've got someone that's maybe experimenting a little bit with the whiteboard function. So I'm just going to stop and then reshare that to clear that off. Terrific. Hopefully that's clear now. Great. So we've got this idea of these thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and what we show to the world. But we also have this opportunity at any moment in the day to reset, reframe, and circuit break. Now, the question that we love to use at Top 5, and we've used this with thousands of people and supported lots of teams to use this question to support each other, is this: not what are more positive things to focus on right now, but what are more helpful, encouraging, or productive things to focus on right now. What are more helpful, encouraging, or productive things to focus on right now? And we've chosen these words really deliberately after a long time doing this work. Helpful is in there because it's about how do we keep moving forward. Encouraging is in there because we're so hard on ourselves. And research shows that one of the most common go-to coping mechanisms when we're stressed, sure, maybe chocolate and booze and Netflix, but it's also critical self-talk. It's one of our coping mechanisms that so many of us are really familiar with. The other reason that encouraging is in there is because research has shown that if people, they write 5 things on their to-do list and they only get 4 done, lots of people, particularly women, will say, well, I didn't get everything that I planned to done, so I might as well have not done anything, and can really lose sight of the huge amount of work that did actually get done. So that's why we use this question. And we've underlined HEP there because a lot of our clients use HEP thinking, and they say that with their teams. We're going to think, how can we take a HEP approach? How can we take a helpful, encouraging, and productive approach? So with that in mind, if we were to reframe, be able to reframe and reset the thoughts that are front and center and strongest in the lead up to this phone call, and focus on and practice thoughts more maybe like this. Let's make this quick. I know my stuff. I'm going to focus on the issue or opportunity, not the person, and we might have a breakthrough today. What sort of feelings, if we move to that second box, what sort of feelings might we be able to tap into? What sort of feelings might we actually be able to tap into? I'd love to hear your suggestions. And remember, before, it was very much around anxiety, defensiveness, anger, a bit of irrational thinking. I love this. Some people are saying a bit more positive, a bit of a sense of accomplishment before you've had the call. Keen to get the phone call happening. So motivated, I describe that as, Gab, I love it, a bit of relief, confidence, and ready for solutions. A bit more proactive, Irene, I love it. Yeah, here are some more examples on the slide. So by the time you actually then pick up the phone to make that call, what's your behavior and communication be like? And I think I love some of the words you've already used here around keen to get it going. Let's solve this problem. Let's be proactive. And here's what that can lead us to show to the world: more open to possibility, present and ready to listen, warm and friendly, relaxed and more able to problem solve, and more relaxed and like ourselves. And the world's calling on us enough for lots of energy. Like, we're feeling stretched at the moment. So anytime we can actually turn up feeling more like ourselves is an enormous relief as well when it comes to energy as well. So sure, this model isn't perfect. And on any day, you might actually, you might experience a bit of column A, a bit of column B, few thoughts and feelings from that first column and also from the second column. But what we know for sure from doing this work for a number of years is that we have a huge opportunity every day to circuit break and what's called reframe or circuit break, and actually reset at any point during the day. Now, we know this model isn't perfect, but we know it is also a really great and easy example that we run through with teams in lots of different scenarios when we're approaching change, when there are unknowns, when there are issues coming up with clients. Or even for when we're too busy. That's a really common story, an automatic thought that kind of sets off its own spiral and cycle for people, particularly in modern day as well. Other circuit breakers, as apart from that question, a really simple one is music is a great circuit breaker. And each of you got to experience that if you're on the call here at 1 o'clock when we got started. It's just a bit of unexpected music to kind of circuit break and get your brain going in another way. And I'll share some ways that we can share some other circuit breaking tips with you. But what we know for sure is that we reach for our practiced thoughts, stories, fears, and beliefs. So the things, especially on the shaky days, the things that we've practiced, those automatic thought patterns that we've had and that we've repeated because most of our thoughts every day are old, are the ones that we reach for. And neuroscience would have us believe that our brain is a little bit like this picture here on the left, and that it's got a number of connections. It's got connections within it, neural connections everywhere. And the more often we've practiced a thought, the stronger that neural connection may be. And so if you can imagine, just drawing on that example I touched on earlier, is that idea around a new opportunity or a new problem has come up or a new piece of work has come across your desk. And if your go-to automatic thought pattern is one of, I'm really busy, or I'm too busy, or I don't have time for this, then to look after you when you're in that scenario, your brain will go, oh, this scenario feels familiar. I know what I'm supposed to think. I know which neural connections to speed down and run through in this scenario. And that may be around, I'm too busy, I don't have time for this. And so there's a real opportunity for us to actually slow down long enough to recognize some of those unhelpful thoughts. And it can be that we find ourselves actually back on this model. It might be that we don't notice the thought first. We might notice the feeling first. It might be that we're feeling a bit agitated. And that gives us the opportunity to then go, well, what's driving this? What are the thoughts or the fears or the stories or the actual sentences that are driving this feeling? And you can step backwards then and say, what else could I focus on here? What is something more helpful, encouraging, and productive? I'd love you to pick up a pen if you've got one. And I'd love you to write down the words, this is easy. And if you don't have a pen, don't worry, just use your finger. Get the finger from your dominant hand and pretend like you're actually just writing it on your desk or your couch or wherever you're sitting now. This is easy. And then tell me, drop in the chat box, what was it like? What was that like for you? Easy. Yeah, thanks, Gav. All right, what I'd love you to do is everybody to switch your hand to the other side. Switch your hand to the other side, that pen to the other side, or if you don't have a pen, just use the finger in your non-dominant hand and try and write that same thing. This is easy on the desk in front of you. I'll give you a bit longer for that side. Okay, and drop into the chat box for me. What was that like? What was it like using your non-dominant hand? Wonky, difficult, terrible? Yeah, terrible, a bit messy, awkward. It takes a bit more concentration, doesn't it? The first time you try and shift this, the first time you try and actually recognize those automatic thoughts and shift to another choice, it will absolutely feel messy, terrible, maybe a bit awkward, maybe a little bit difficult, and it will require more energy. But after time, what we can do is actually change those automatic thought patterns and those neural connections to focus on the most helpful, encouraging, and productive thing in the most important moments in our lives and within the most important habits in our lives. And although that might feel a bit messy and awkward and like it takes a bit of work, and it might actually feel more like this picture on the right here on the screen, in that you're navigating the wilderness. It's not as easy or as convenient as speeding down a highway like in the left picture. But over time, it can become one of the most powerful skills that can influence you every single day. I think that is pretty exciting. We've talked about this question, what are more helpful, encouraging, and productive thoughts to focus on right now? Something that is really particularly important at the moment, while we're in the big melting pot of feelings with ourselves and our loved ones and our teammates and our teams, is also being able to validate how people are feeling. This isn't about agreeing with people, but I think it's one of the missed opportunities that we have. And so I just want to add in this little sentence, and we'll share this with you. We'll give you an opportunity to get some of these resources via email, is just adding this little bonus sentence in at the start. And this might be when someone's telling you, you can see they feel frustrated or sad or angry about something, is just adding in this sentence at the start. It makes sense that you feel that way, that you feel angry, sad, upset. It can be the most powerful circuit breaker for people to make them feel seen before you move into this question. What are more helpful, encouraging, and productive thoughts? As I said, we'll share that with you too. So far, we've been exploring the idea and the opportunity about how we circuit break on the fly. How do we circuit break in those moments on the fly? And what I'd love to spend the rest of the session doing is giving you some tools that you can use to circuit make. This is about how do you, not on the fly when you're trying to recognize and change things, but how do you just proactively add some routines into your life that can support you to fuel yourself with more helpful, encouraging, and productive thoughts. The first is what we call a top 5 list. So this is actually about, at the end of the day, picking up a pen and writing down 5 things that are worth remembering from that day. Not for over the top, ridiculous positive reasons, but that just are worth remembering and meaningful for you in some way. It could be finding $2 on the ground. It could be getting a text from someone you hadn't heard from for a while. It could be that you had to go and pick something up and you thought it was going to rain and it didn't. This is about actually really focusing in and honing in on the small wins from the day. I believe in this tool so much that I've named my company after it. And it's a tool that would be so easy to do and easy not to do. It's a nice idea. Sure, I'll write down a few things at the end of the day, but let me tell you why it's really powerful. A small tool like this can support you to feel more relaxed, more confident, more emotionally calm, to sleep better, to be physically more healthy, to be able to connect with others more, to be more mentally healthy. And when we look at the workplace, this little tool can support you actually with building and nurturing 4 of the top 5 skills that employers will be looking for in 10 years' time. They are problem solving, communication, creativity, and analytical skills. The 5th one is STEM, in case anybody's wondering. But it's kind of funny that this little habit that you've tuned in to hear about today could actually support your future employment prospects. I think that's pretty exciting as well. Now, I can also hand on heart say that this tool has supported my family and I on the toughest days when, you know, complicated things have happened in the world, and days as well as we've supported my brother, who is a returned soldier, as he's really suffered with some pretty significant mental health issues, and we've nearly lost him a couple of times. And having this tool to pull us together and focus on the wins, even on those really tough days, has been really key in us supporting and looking after our mental health as well, in those really tough times. We've collected tens of thousands of these memories over the last little while. And what it actually does, it's not only you've got a nice list of things to look back on, but it actually changes your brain. Your brain is like Velcro for the bad stuff because it wants to protect you. It wants to learn from the bad stuff to protect you. And it's like Teflon for the good stuff. Neuroscience would have us believe that we can create new neurons firing in our brain, and we can change the shape of our brain in as little as 20 seconds when we actually slow down long enough to recognize the positive things that are happening. Might be relief. It might relief when you do a task that you've been procrastinating about for a while, or it could be feeling a bit of pride when something, you know, some numbers line up and work out just as you'd expected them the first time. This is about really noticing and training your brain to look for those small wins. Now, at the start, we did an activity around looking for the red and blue things, and we could see how powerful that was and how it influenced your brain in the moment. I want you to think about when a few bad things happen in any day. Maybe you stub your toe or you lose $10, and someone will be really quick to say to you, oh, bad things happen in threes. Just wait. And I can guarantee every single time you will find that third thing, because your brain will fiercely be looking for it to support that statement. And so what this little habit does, it just actually flips that on its head and says every single day, there are good things to notice: kindness, encouragement, wins, little sparks of confidence. There are really wins to notice. And this trains your brain to soak them up and see them. Another tool given you an opportunity to receive is this one. It's a PDF and it's called a to feel list. And we use it with many clients to support them to flip their to-do list on its head and actually make some decisions around how they want to experience that day. Maybe it's more confident, with more confidence, more strength. Maybe it's with focus. It's actually people deciding at the start of the day and setting an intention on how are they going to turn up, because any day can be lived out 100 different ways, and you actually get to be in the driver's seat and make a decision around the feelings that are most important to you at the start of the day. It's not a silver bullet, right? It's not saying that they're the only feelings that you'll experience, but by actually writing it down and committing to it, it gives you more opportunity throughout the day to notice again and soak up those opportunities, which is pretty fun. So we can share that give you an opportunity to receive that too. So today we've covered quite a few things. We've covered the RAS, training your brain's filter, the thoughts triangle, reframing, circuit breaking, writing a top 5 list, and that to feel daily planner. And this is all really nice, but let's get real. Our lives are feeling pretty full at the moment. So let's just take a moment to think about everything we've just covered then, whether you've seen it before or not. That's not the opportunity here. The opportunity is to think about what could you do right now, what's immediately actionable for you in your lives as you navigate whatever is to come for this week, this month, this year. And to help you do that, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. The first is, how likely, with 10 being most likely, would you be able to actually put into place some of the stuff that we've covered today in your day-to-day work? How likely is it that you'd be able to use some of this? Out of 10, drop it in the chat box. Tony, thanks for kicking us off with a 10. Melanie, great. Alison, thank you. how likely is it you'd be able to use it? It's not how many of those tools, but how likely is it that you can put some of it in place? Great to see. Excellent. My next question for you is, what could you do more of or less of? Drop it in the chat box. What could you do more of or less of with what we've covered today, or what you've been reminded about today? One thing you do more or less of. Remember, the wind's beautiful. Thanks for kicking us off there, Gab. Be more mindful and less critical. It's huge, Alison. We're our toughest critics, aren't we? And that has a flow-on impact. Those thoughts that we, that language that we use behind closed doors, it does go on to flow on to impact how we feel and show up. I love it. Focusing on the positive, try and focus less on the negatives. Jacinta, great comment. So there's a big psychological body of evidence nicknamed the white polar bear research. And it's named that because there's this idea that if I tell you not to focus on a white polar bear, what do you focus on? You know, it's almost the only thing that you can picture. And so the idea is around flipping that on to focus less on the negatives. It's almost like the more positive thoughts, or the more helpful, encouraging and productive thoughts, or HEP thoughts, that you can add into your day, there's simply less room for some of those negative thoughts as well. So really great examples, everyone. Thank you. The next tool is, how could these tools be valuable for your team? I know some of you may be in a team of one, and that's totally okay, but how could they be valuable to your team? How could freeing up space, circuit breaking, reducing and releasing the pressure on some of those unhelpful feelings that can take our energy away, how could that be valuable for your team? Oh, I love that one, Alan. Finding solutions rather than problems. I love it. We have many clients say to us that we're working on longer programs, that they feel like they've got the tools to solve problems or look at problems in a different way than they ever have before, and that they've got a new language to be able to build trust and explore things with their team members, you know, sit alongside them and look at issues and opportunities together, as well, in really helpful and encouraging ways. I love that. Excellent. And what we will do, my last thought I wanted to make is, how do you keep this alive? Like, how do you keep this alive? You've all committed and invested this time to be here today, and maybe it's given you a bit of a reset or refuel. Maybe it's given you a new way or just a bit of space to think about some things differently. And I guess one thing I wanted to offer you the opportunity to do is for us to share some extra resources with you after today. So for any of you that would like that, we encourage you to share your email address with Gab from the FinPro team, or just let Gab know. You can email her and say, yes, please, to the resources. And Gab's going to then pull together those email addresses and let us know. And what we will do then is, once a week over the next month, is we'll drop into your inbox with some really tailored resources to support you to keep this alive, whether it's with you and your team, or whether you want to try it out supporting your loved ones. You'll be able to do that. So that opportunity is absolutely there. All you need to do is let Gab from the FinPro team know that you'd like the extra resources and that you're happy for her to share your email address with us. So I believe we've got a few minutes for questions. So what I'm going to do is just say an enormous thanks so far and hand over to Bradley to go from here.
Thanks a lot for that, Claire, and fantastic. Lots of little tips and tricks in there. I think that's been really important, because, as you said, not each one's sort of going to sit and work for everybody, but hopefully there's something small in there for someone to take away. And, as you said, it's been a pretty trying long period of time to help. I thought in your first slide, the top 11 things that might have been happening, sort of eating much, I think probably a few of us have been drinking a bit more alcohol than normal too over this past 18 months, which obviously we will try to moderate where we can. So, yeah, happy to open up to questions. We've got a couple of minutes left, so either into the chat box, and I'm happy to read it out, or if someone's big and brave enough to put their hand up, or just jump off mute and ask a question of Claire, please feel free to. Sometimes a quiet bunch, Claire. What's the one thing that you obviously sort of teaching these sessions? And obviously talking about sort of mindfulness and different tips and tricks. How do you sort of debrief and sort of relax after a session like this?
Yeah, great point. So pretty exciting doing this work. I love talking about this, and there's a lot of adrenaline. What I find, and from working with people who are doing roles where they really care about people, and what I know for sure is that for the people that are on the call today, they've seen parts of their clients' lives that they've never seen before as well, and also different levels of financial stress. And so it can be really, when people are doing jobs like this, it can be really actually hard to switch off because the work's never done, and you're also carrying a lot of emotions for other people. And so we work with a lot of community organisations, frontline community organisations that are the same as well. And so people often look at things like black and white. You're either switched on or you're switched off. You're switched on or you're relaxing. And you're not a light bulb, right? You're a human. And so when you do work that you're really passionate about, it's actually highly unlikely that you might just be able to switch off like that. And so what I do and my team does, and what we really share with our clients, is around the importance of, if you find it hard to relax and switch off because it kind of you go from 100 to 0, it's actually about reframing that as well to the idea of going from on or switching on to recharging. And that actually is the time that you're having when you're not working is actually when you recharge and you recover. And that is really important time as well. So it is actually that switching that. And that when people see that, they're like, oh, so this actual rest, this makes sense that I'm going to take this time and I'm going to have this downtime, because when I go at it again, I'm going to actually be able to go at it harder and to be able to support my clients in new ways and think of new solutions as well. So I think that's something really important, particularly when we're in roles that you really care about and care about your customers like you all will. It's important to keep in mind.
It's certainly right, and obviously working in local government, there's a lot of us that really do have to care for the sector or for the community. You are making a difference. So really important. And great comment there from Mark. Just finding sometimes it's easier to make those micro adjustments rather than making that really big change. So.
Oh, absolutely. And if I can just expand on that, like when people think about change, they romanticize it and it's got to be this big step. It is actually, Mark, I love that word you've used, the micro adjustments every single day, those tiny little reframes that you can make along the way that just might not shift you from feeling 10 out of 10 annoyed to 0 out of 10, or from 0 out of 10 confidence to 10 out of 10. But those little shifts can open up so much possibility and free up so much energy. And I think that's never been more important.
Absolutely. Well, Claire, can I say a massive thank you on behalf of everyone here in attendance today? It's been fantastic. As we said, we try and put some of these sort of webinars on, often technical ones, but it's really great to take the time, I think, to invest in ourselves. Hopefully you've all got something out of it. As Claire said, she's got a number of fantastic pieces of sort of resources that she's tailored to the type of work that we've been doing. And if you want to receive that, please just email Gab. Let her know, and we'll make sure we get them over the next month. But on behalf of FinPro, thank you very much, Claire, and to everyone else, have a great Thursday afternoon, and make sure you take some time to reflect on Claire's messages and put something in place to recharge the battery going forward. So good to see everyone, and catch us next time. Cheers.